Thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Lance Steinert. I am a systems engineer up here in the Kansas City area covering accounts there and then also down southern Missouri. I'm joined by Jay. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi again. How's everybody doing?
Yeah.
Most people know me. I'm here in the Wichita area covering some accounts in KC, so I'm all over the place.
Today we're mostly talking the Cisco Catalyst Series Switching. We'll kind of show you the different models, where you kind of pitch into those, mostly focusing today on the entry-level one before we get into the Modular 94s, but we will go ahead and kick it off. First thing
we'll say, if any questions come up, just drop them in the Q&A, and we'll kind of address them as we go along here.
Yep, absolutely. And then another housekeeping one is we will provide this link afterwards, so you need to watch it offline, certainly do so. And then also we'll send you the datasheet links that we use for showing up the 1K, the 92, and 93. So we'll make sure we follow that up in the email. But we'll start with the whole reason why we're kind of talking about these is because there's been end-of-life announcements for a lot of the ones we're already used to or in our infrastructure. The Catalyst 4500E, 4500X, 3850, 2960Cs have all been marked into life. And what's interesting is when you go to Cisco.com, if you look for anything on this 3650s, you get directed to 9300s. It tells you, hey, you should look at these. And when you go to the 2960Xs, you get directed to the 9200. So just something to be aware of, that they're not marked into life, but Cisco is doing like a soft push just to make sure that you're aware of those, to maybe look at replacing those instead of to give you a longer life cycle on those. The other thing I wanted to talk about was actually the licensing aspect that's come along with the Catalyst side. I know it's a little different having a base license and a subscription license, but what happens here is when you do purchase your 93 or a 92, you have to decide if you're going with a Network Essentials or Network Advantage base license. Base never expires. That will always stay with you. Perpetual stays with the hardware. And the difference between those is Network Essentials is a more like LAN-based. You can do layer 2. There's a few routed access. You can do EIGP stub, OSPF, but only 1,000 routes. So if you're doing a little small routing, you can do that. But if you're doing anything large scale, which you can see on Network Advantage here, you can see if you do an ERP, HSRP, anything, or VXLAN, you need to use the Advantage to be able to use those features. And then we've talked about the subscription. When you see those, the 3, 5, 7-year term, those expire, but what's different is if you let these go, it does not have an impact on your day-to-day function on your base license. And then these come in 3 flavors with the Essentials, Advantage, and Premier. Each one has a little few different features inside DNAC, and we'll show you that inside the data sheets, which kind of shows you what you get with the Essentials, Advantage, and Premier. One thing to note though is the Catalyst 1K series does not have a subscription or a base. It just comes with a default license that has a advanced layer 2 functionality. We'll kind of talk about that. And so this is where we're looking at for our portfolio. We've got the 1Ks here. That's going to be more of our smaller or compact deployments in places where you've used either 2960Cs or maybe in some of the 3560CXs. All the way up to, we have 9200s, 93, depending on the features you want to use, and then our modulars and our cores at the 95 and 96. And that leads us to the Catalyst 1000. This is what we're looking at here, kind of a bare bones. Some of these have a fanless or they're compact. They do use the Cisco iOS, and you can still put TAC on them. So if you have questions, you can make sure to reach out and get the support you need on them. They come with 1 or 10 gig uplinks, and they do offer PoE. And of course, you can then put the security. So if you're wanting to do 802.1x, you can still do that with the 1K, even though it's a more compact series.
Yeah, I think the key feature there is the classic iOS, right? We've moved to iOS XE on almost all the platforms except for the 1Ks. So that's one of the big differences. And I think the fanless build is kind of interesting for some particular deployments.
Yeah, and this is where I definitely wanted to show that the 1K is using the same iOS that we're used to. It's not anything different. You don't have to learn anything. This is what we've been using the whole time. The 1K definitely just continues that series. And this is what we're looking at for when you look at the 1K. We have 8 ports, 16, 24, and 48, depending on what type of PoE requirements you might need with some of these. And like I said, when you get to the smaller ones, they are fanless. When you get up to the 24, you get a little bit more PoE. They do have fanless also available if you're worried about sound for some of those. When you get up to the larger ones, you can then have the 4 ports for SFP instead of just the 2 that come with the 8 and the 16. I wanted to show here was just how the actual design aspect looks for the 1K. When you're doing with 24 ports and lower, you're just using the embedded CPU, the ASIC that comes with it, showing you the two 1 gig SFP connections that come off the side. When you go to the 48, because of the speeds that you're going with the two 10 gigs on the side, we actually put on another ASIC. So you've got the 0 for the embedded and then the extra one to handle the throughput that would be required on that. So just something kind of cool to see how they break out when you have the bandwidth needs that we actually put the ASICs in there to handle that for you. And so with that, we'll actually click our, get rid of the laser pen and go to ludicrous speed to the data sheets here. And in case you don't know, that is a Spaceball reference. I am a huge Spaceballs fan. And so this is on the data. Yeah, surprise. On the data sheets, it really shows you what you're able to do with the 1Ks, what you PoE budgets, ports capacity, if you're going with the SFPs or if you're just doing RJ45s, all the way down to 24 ports, 48. So really just wanted to show you that if you go on the data sheets, it kind of, you can make sure that any questions you have get answered on what your PoE requirements are. And here's where we talked about the licensing being just the, let me move up here real fast. I think I went past it.
From a make and model perspective, though, I mean, we make these things like every variety. It's just like the 9Ks. I mean, get them with PoE, get them with high power PoE, 24 port, 48 port, 8 port, 16 port models. So there's, I don't know, dozens of varieties out there just in the 1K series.
Yep. Yeah, and this is where I want to show the universal iOS image that all of them come with the advanced layer 2 functionality. You don't have, there's no perpetual, there's no subscription based. So the 1Ks are there just at what the cost you would expect. And that moves us into the 92s. Let me get my laser pointer again.
Real quick, one thing I wanted to touch on the 1Ks and make them a little unique, other than the iOS obviously, is that Bluetooth console access that's baked in. So you can actually get console access over Bluetooth. And, you know, as you can see here, we're offering that in the 9Ks with an add-on dongle, but the 1Ks is actually baked in. So I think that's kind of a neat little feature. And it is switchable because I know some folks don't want wireless console.
Someone outside your closet trying to get it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That could be a potential security issue, but I think it sure does make it a lot easier on us not having to carry our console cables anymore, right?
Yep, I agree. With the 92, that's what we're looking at just for more of the viewing point if you've got one. We are looking into 4 gigs, 2 gigs memory, 4 gig flash, perpetual, fast PoE. MGig does come with the 92s, and you can also go with either fixed or modular, so just more of what we're looking at. Diving into it with your fixed uplinks, you have the either just 48 ports data, 10 gig. You can go all the way down to 24 ports of full PoE, M gig. So anything that you got in the modular, you can get on the fixed. The only thing that is a big difference, and we'll talk about it later on, is the stacking and the throughput that you get with those. Because of the modulars, you've got to be able to expand if you replace that the NIC card that comes with it. And they also, some of them have. Yep.
One other thing I was going to touch on too, between the fixed and the modular, we're not going to talk about SDA today. We just don't have enough time. But the fixed uplink models support less VRFs than the modular uplink models. So when you start talking about an SDA deployment, that can be a serious restriction. I think on the 9200s, it's like, I think the fixed uplinks only do like 4 VMs. So yeah, that's really not enough for an enterprise deployment. So just another restriction to keep in mind.
Yep. Yeah, and they do have modular fans if you do need replacement that we're kind of used to. Power supplies, depending on what you wanted to go with for your PoE requirements. And then with the modulars, you got the 4.1 or the 10, the 25, all the way up to the 40 gig if you're trying to just use that for the backbone up. Some of the one things I want to point out with the 92s that we have the MACsec, we have the PoE, cold patching, and then Cisco iOS XE. And this is the difference between the uplinks. So if you use a MGig, you're able to use these modulars. So if you're just using a basic 48 port with no MGigs, you're not able to use these modulars, which is the 110 or 25 or the 240s. And it says only on the MGig SKUs. So if you're looking at something and you wanted that 40 gig or 25 gig back upgrade, like to your distribution, you're going to want to look at the MGig switches because they have the capability to use those network modules, where the other ones, just these two here on the side. Also the same thing with the power supplies. These are only if you're doing non-PoE. If you want to bump up, you can go with a 600, 1000 watt. Just wanted to show those here. For redundant power supply, should be identical. Don't try to mix max. And this is where we kind of talked about first stack-wise between the 160 and the 80. The difference here is if you're using the fixed, you're going to use the 80. And if you're using modular, you get the 160, and we'll kind of cover into that. But what we're used to on the 2960Xs, stacking cables, there is no power stacking on these. You can stack up to 8. Do not stack differences between fixed and modular. So if you're going to stack them, they all need to be the same. Make sure, and they also need to be running the same iOS XE. So kind of what we're used to in 3850s and 93 is that if you're going to stack them, they all have to be on the same version. And the only difference here is you can't mix between fixed and modular.
Yeah, you can still, I want to point out, you can mix between like 24 and 48 port.
Yep.
You can mix between PoE and non-PoE, but yeah, you can't mix between 92s and 9300s, and you can't mix between fixed uplinks and modular uplinks. So those are kind of the restrictions around that stack-wise.
Yep. And this is what we're looking at for if you do have the fans that you can replace, just pinch them and pull them out. The fixed ones are actually then have the metal vent on the side where you're not able to use those. If you do go with the fixed fans, know that you can operate with a single fan as long as the temperatures are not too hot. And what we wanted to show here was the actual, if you open up inside, what we're looking at here is the stacking between the 160 and 80, 100 gigs for bandwidth, 16K net flow, the difference of speeds, 2.5, 5, 10, all the way to 40 gig. Let me build this out. And another one, like we did on the 1K, I just want to show you how the design aspect works on these 9200s. Sorry, switched it. Anything that's not MGig will have the ASIC on here, mostly to handle the 48 ports of either 10, 100, 1000, or with the uplinks on here. But when you go to anything that's got MGigs, they throw on the other ASIC. That's to handle the speeds that you're going to put on those modules all the way to the 40 that's split across. And mostly just wanted to show the difference that when you get that higher speed, we actually put on another ASIC to be able to handle the load that you're going to put on that. So what is this thing running? We are running Cisco iOS XE Lite. The difference between that is, and this is the one I want to point out, they removed unused libraries to make it more optimized. They were able to actually reduce the image size by 50%. So these things are really used for connectivity at spots where you're not doing a lot of features, but you want to still be able to control it the way that you're used to. Cisco decided to put XE Lite on there, and it's the same across all 9200. So if you get a MGig or you get a fixed versus modular, it's the same image across all of those. High availability, we kind of talked about on the side, but this is what we're looking at when we say the difference between fixed and modular. On the modular ones, we get the 160. No difference on how you stack them. What comes into play here is the 80 gigs bidirectional in the spatial reuses of 160 gigs. So that's because you're going to be having speeds that you might go up to that 110, 25. When you're using the fixed and you can't get to those speeds, they change it down to just the 40 gig bidirectional, each ring's 20 and the 80. So that's why when you see it between the 80 and the 160, it's talking between the fixed and the modular. Just want to make sure everybody was aware that when you looked, you're like, well, what's the difference? And with the 9200s, we also support stack-wise the stateful switchover. So what we're used to with 3850s, if the master fails, the secondary takes over, standby resumes roll the active and continues to keep the stack operational, which is really cool that you get the same features you expect with the 93s, but with the 92, even if you're not doing the same feature set. And just wanted to show again, there's no power stacking, regular stacking, what you're used to. These cables all are only used for these, so you can't mix max like 2960Xs and pull those in. These are just used for the 9200s. How many can we stack? Up to 8 switches in the stack. We've talked about how you cannot add 2960Xs or 93s. They have to be all 92s, and they all either have to be all fixed or all modular, but it doesn't matter if you're using the 24 or 48. If you have MGig, just as long as they fit that criteria, they all fit there. And that since these 9200s are looking to replace the 2960Xs, if that's where you're going, just wanted to show the differences between the two, how we've bumped up trust by default compared to the untrusted, 8 Qs instead of 4, 6 instead of 4. So just know that there's more ability on the QS side with these 9200s.
Trust by default. praise the Lord, we finally have trusted by default. Like, that's been a VoIP guy's nightmare in every network, right? Like, did we turn trust on every trunk port? Nope, we missed one.
Person's
all my VoIP traffic's going best effort.
Yep. And then the cool thing with the 9200s is now with this some things demanding PoEs that you can't do restarts. You have to ask certain people because it might interrupt their power abilities. We actually add some of features on here to where there's perpetual, where it's uninterrupted, to classification where you can make the PoE get pulled even before it negotiates it. And then of course fast PoE, which it can restore within 30 seconds. So the way that kind of looks, if you wanted to do the 2 event, which allows devices to get power even before they actually do the CDP negotiation, you have to do this command to do that, but that then allows these things to do a little quicker pull than waiting for the whole process to go through. Perpetual is where if you do a soft reload, if you're doing like a hot patch or something that's just requiring an image upgrade, PoE will stay consistent, so those devices will stay online. They don't have to restart the whole process to come online. So if you do have video and you're using that for PoE, very important because video will still record because it's got the power associated with it. And then lastly is the fast PoE, which is be able to restore 30 seconds. So if it does a hard reboot, it can try and come back quicker than waiting for that whole process again. And then the way the 9200s are doing budgeting based off your power supplies, if you put a 600, you're only getting the 370, but if you put both in there, you can get up to 740. And we kind of talked about make sure they are identical to ensure the loads are the same. But just wanted to show this in case you were curious on how much, if you had a lot of PoE requirements, even though the 9200s can handle a lot of those. Another difference with the 2960Xs and us is the ingress and egress for NetFlow. We can do up to 16K flows. 2960s can only do 8, and we can match later to VLAN headers. I just wanted to, since we are looking at removing, this is what you're kind of looking at if you go with the 9200s. How do we manage these? You can do it your normal way, SSH, but if you're going more into software defined, or if you want the ability to do a managed network, these play into the DNAC, or they also have their own web GUI that you can access in there to do some of the basic functionalities. But we just wanted to show you there's several ways to manage the 9200s if that's the way you want to go.
And the web UI is substantially better than it used to be. It is much, much better on the 9Ks. I mean, on the 2Ks, 3Ks, it's like, don't turn that thing on. It's a hot mess.
Yep.
And I think another thing to touch on too is the API programmability options. I mean, a lot of folks are starting to move that direction with their own homebrewed scripts, and of course we do support that on all the 9Ks.
Yep. And this is where we kind of talked about with the 2960Xs and XRs, what we're looking at the differences are here for hardware. You do get the 4 gigs. If you're doing the modular, fixed is only 2, what the buffer sizes look between them, the stacking between those, how many members, stacking bandwidth, all the way through, just to show you kind of what you're moving to. If you were a 2960X customer, there's a lot more hardware that you can optimize for your environment. And with that, we're going to teleport off to the 9200 breakout. Pull this thing across here real fast. The same thing here with the data sheets.
Effects.
I know. I didn't know if sound would go over well. You're supposed to do the sound. And so here, this is where you can break it down to where if you're looking at modulars, if you're just doing PoE, make sure you come to the Cisco Sky, look at the data sheets and kind of see which one fits your needs. Always reach out to us too if you have questions. We can help you with it. But I wanted to show you all the models we've got, the ability to put which uplinks you want. And then this is where the differences between the essentials and advantage for subscription ones. So we talked about how this is the subscription. If you let it expire, if you had a DNA advantage, what you'd lose out on is some SD access. You wouldn't get the assurance data that you were getting before. You would lose the automation if you plug and play. So these are all just features that if you decide you don't like that subscription, you still get the base features that you expect when you bought it, which is like layer 2. You can get your ERGRP, HSRP if you bought the Advantage license. So this just is another reference that if you had questions on what is with those, data sheets will show you how that kind of breaks up. All right. Laser pointer back to the last ones are Catalyst 9300s. I think some of you at least known about this it's been a couple years now, and this has really turned into our main feature switch that we can do a lot with. the overview here is we do have fixed uplinks, kind of like what we've seen on the 9200s. And if you're looking like 3650s or 3850s, we've got SKUs that kind of fit those models if you were just looking to replace those. And another cool thing we've added are 1 gig fiber modules. Now they don't do 10, so if you had like 3850s that you were looking for just replacing your fiber, we don't have the 10 gig yet for the actual interfaces, so they're just either 24.1 or 48.1 gigs. I don't have any time frame if they plan on releasing anything more than that, but if that fits your needs, just want to make sure you're aware that we do have those for you. And show in here with the module uplinks between the fixed uplinks, we do have PoE for those. What we're looking at from
PoE Plus and UPoE is kind of the new hotness, right? Getting up to 60 watts.
Yep.
And that's something that we don't support on the 9200s. So that is one big difference between the 92s and the 93s.
And this is the stacking with the power stacking that we're kind of, if you were in the 3850 family, we're used to seeing here. Almost the exact same cables with the stacking and the power stack with your power supplies here. This is what we kind of talked about, the PoE, 21 ports of 90 watts standalone if you get the 48 HX, or if you join with 24. And we're kind of breaking this out to kind of show you what we're looking at here. So devices that require the 90 watts or cameras, if you have TVs, HVAC, the ability to put 90 watts up to 168 ports, that's pretty powerful, especially if you have people that just want to plug into your switch for the low voltage compared to putting an electrician to run the cabling. That these 9300s have the UPoE Plus that can handle whatever's being thrown at them. And then you can also do the UP Plus with either the standalone with the stack. Just want to reiterate that. And then the difference here is with the multi-gig with everything required. So Wi-Fi 6 is really big with what we're moving to. That the ability to handle more throughput than what's on those normal 1 gig access ports. So how do we go across that? Well, Cisco came. We were using the multi-gig idea that we're able to use 2.5 to 5 gig on existing Cat 5e or Cat 6 cables to be able to give those devices the throughput they need. But you have to ensure that you're using a switch that's got the M-Gig enabled. And something you want to think about then is ensuring that your uplink can handle the throughput. So your module uplink, make sure you have the throughput to handle those if you're trying to do stacking. So just one of the things to pay attention to as you start designing the way that you want to use M-Gig.
Yeah, and that's the reason why. I mean, kind of like you touched on earlier, on any of the M-Gig models, we tend to support higher speed uplinks, and we have more ASICs on the back end to support that higher throughput backplane. But an important point there is both ends of that connection do have to support M-Gig. So of course, all of our new Wi-Fi 6 WAPs, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them support M-Gig up to 5 gig. And some of the switches, specific models, will support M-Gig as well. So kind of like the 9200s, we'll go over the data sheet later, but we make them in like every size and flavor imaginable. So.
Yeah, and something to point out here, if you're using those M-Gig, it does not work on 10. 100 up is fine, but if you have any devices that are 10, they need to plug into the non-M-Gig to ensure that they're going to work correctly.
There's always that one, isn't there? Like some facilities guy somewhere has something running at 10 half, I promise. And you'll find it.
Yeah, exactly. You do the replacement, and this guy, hey, it's not working. It's like, I have no clue what that is. Why is it not? The differences are with the M-Gigs between the modular uplinks and fixed uplinks. So even if you don't want to do the modular, we still have the UPoE with M-Gig on the fixed uplink. So if that's the way you like to, kind of have the fixed SKU, you know what you're getting every time, we have that option for you. Just want to make sure it's available on both. So the way these modulars break down, we do have the M-Gig line card if you needed to add more ports there. We have the 4.1, we have 8 10s, and then 1 10 25, and all the way up to the 40 gigs. The fixed, we have a little bit difference here. We have the 4.1, 4 10s, or 2 40s. We don't have the 1 10 or 25s. So just make sure we are aware of that while you're planning on which ones you want to use from certain spots. Power supplies. Same that we're kind of used to, the 350, 750, and 1001. And if you're using DC, we've got one. Modular fans, we kind of talked about the 9200s, just pinch those, replace them if you need to, if you have problems going on with those. They all have the N+1 redundancy for the 93s. Something else that's really cool with the 93s, I think Jay kind of talked about the 92, is the enhanced storage. Like you can run containers onto your actual switching devices. And then what I saw really cool today was an article talking about running Minecraft on a Catalyst 9300. Now, I don't recommend that in case somebody's watching you.
I saw that. I mean, that's a creative use case for it.
Yep.
Probably not one I'd use in production, but we do see a lot of customers running like Wireshark, Kibana,
Yep.
log exporters, Puppet or Chef, Python scripts right on the box. There's a lot of really cool use cases for it.
Yeah, the 9300 is very flexible in whatever environment it's in. If you're doing containing and it's got graceful insertion, you can do actual patching now. And we'll kind of talk about that as we go across, but there's a lot of features on this that really makes it a powerful tool to have. Someone else, and I think we talk about, we kind of forget about, is the blue beaconing. So if you're in a stack of switching and you're telling one of your engineers or someone else to go help out and they don't know which one you're talking about, you can enable the little beacon here that will be flashing. So this one here, switch to, or for whatever reason they get out of order and they don't know which switch is which, you can be able to use the blue beacon to show which device you want to have the attention focused on. And just same thing we talked about in the other is I want to show the architectural that the 93 setup. We've got the UADP 2.0, and then we also have a 9300B series. It's got a little bit more beefier that will kind of show the difference between it, but 160 gig bandwidth. We're looking at 2 8 megabit packets, all the speed you can go through. And then the UADP 2.0 XL, which is on the B series, gives you even more. So we're looking at like 240, 16 megabit packet filters, all the speeds that these things can really handle a lot of stuff being thrown at them. Here's the under the cover view, what we're looking at if you took the top off just to see it. Here's where we're looking at for lookup tables to know the differences between the B series and then like the Catalyst series. Almost kind of a double between all those. If you're using security group tags, it stays the same, but if you're doing anything else, that's where you want to kind of look at the higher end B series for that. We kind of already talked about UPoE, but just wanted to make sure we show you that you have the ability to deliver up to 90 watts if that's happening in your environment. For new classes, we can still do all the basics that you're used to. So we've got the 15, PoE with the 30, UPoE 60, and then now all the way up to 90 using Cat 5e and 6. That's just kind of how the pairs of those broke down. And if you're doing UPoE, just make sure you're running the version 16.12.1. That way you're up to date with those. High availability, this is one of the cool things I wanted to talk about was hot patching. I saw this in a demo, is the ability to do hot patching on your 9300. So if there's something that you see is happening, you identify with TAC and you see a field notice and there's a release for it, you can actually do a hot patch which will just install it without reloading the whole switch. And so nobody gets dropped, everything still happens, and you also get to resolve the issue that you're having there, which is, that was really cool to see. I'm not used to that. Used to having it reloaded every time.
Talking about the ISRs a couple weeks ago, I think that's a big part of iOS XE is that modularity and the ability to like patch and restart specific services without just cold booting the whole switch. So, we really have iOS XE to thank for that particular feature. I will say there are restrictions around that, right? So It kind of depends on the release and the specific feature sets, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yep. And here again, we're going to kind of see the difference between the 480 and the 320. It's going to be differences between either the B series or I think it's maybe the fixed and the modular, but there's also a little bit difference on the stack wise. Here we are looking for normal different, like same way as stacking before, different members. This is where, so on the modular ones, we're looking at the 240 for unidirectional, you get 3 rings, but this is where you get the 480 spatial reuse it. So on the modular ones, you get the higher throughput because, of course, if you're using the modular, you can get all the way up to the 40 gigs or the 11025s to handle what's being required. When you go with the fixed, we do drop down to 160 and 320. So just a little bit of a difference between modular, we get the 240, 480, and then with the fixed 160 to 320. How do these work when you're stacking them? You can do 8 switches on those. You make sure that, I think it's on the next one we kind of talk about, you cannot, just got to build up my slide, of course. Yeah, you cannot stack non-B and B SKUs, and you cannot stack fixed. So right now, if you have 9300Ls, which are the fixed uplinks, you can stack all those together. Doesn't matter if it's MGig, 24, 40 gig. But down the road, there's plan to be able to map between non-B and B. But right now, just make sure that they stay the same until I have a better time frame on what's going to happen. So if you got B SKUs right now, make sure those stack the same. We're not ready to mix max those quite yet. Power stacking, because that didn't happen in the 9200s. Basically, you stack a 4, so we can do 8 if you're doing the XPS. You want to do the N+1 redundancy on that. You can, if you want to ensure your power supplies on both of those, you can do, depending on what kind of fault tolerant you want to do on those. This is the power budgeting between those. On the default, just power sharing. Everybody gets it. If you want to do, configuration, you can do more redundant mode to kind of pick and choose. But just by default, it is on the power sharing. QoS, we want to show all the way through the ingress and on the egress. We trust classification, we do policies, shaping. All ports are trusted on layer 2 and layer 3 by default on the 9300, so just want to kind of show the whole way the packets are traversing across those. Security, 9300 does have the max set for the 256 to ensure. We have encrypted traffic, ETA, to build, and it's a big difference on the 93. I don't think you can do this on the 92, so only on the 93s because it can handle it. So something to be aware of that if you're looking to ensure that, looking for those spikes of weird or random activity, that the 9300s can handle that to be able to see what's happening.
This is huge. And of course, ETA works with Stealthwatch. But in short, what's really exciting about ETA is we can detect patterns for malware or ransomware and encrypted traffic without decrypting it. A lot of places, we're doing like SSL decrypt at firewalls or somewhere on the edge, a load balancer or whatever. That's going to become really, really hard with TLS 1.3. I hate to say impossible because nothing's impossible, right? We'll find a way, but it's going to be really, really hard.
Yep.
So being able to look into that encrypted traffic and figure out whether or not it's bad without decrypting it is huge.
Yep. And that is supported on the 93s. And what the 9300 is the trustworthy solution that we built that you've grown accustomed to. It was secure boot, genuine hardware that's not been tampered with, authentic OSs, ensuring that our images are signed. Just what you would expect is continuing on with the 9300. NetFlow allows for both ingress and egress, 64 flows per ASIC. And if you're doing the extra large, you get up to 128,000. It can match a layer 2 VLAN header. So just something to be aware of if you're looking for NetFlow, 9300 can handle all that you're looking to do. The ability to do Python, this is what we kind of talked about with the ability to do containers, but you can use Python with the 9300s to do some Ghost Shell, or if there's things you want to run on those that you haven't really normally been able to do before.
Yeah, if you're looking to run scripts off box, like on an NMS server or something, we support RESTconf, NetConf, YAML models. But yeah, we can also do it on box if you want to run Python scripts right there on the switch.
Yep. And just continuing off of that, with all the tools that if you want to run that directly on the 9300, you can do that. If you want to do different things with Python or put a Docker instance on there, 9300 lets you kind of do a lot of cool stuff there. And then what I wanted to show here is manageability. That if you wanted to use the embedded GUI that like Jay talked about, we did upgrade it to give it a better user experience to be able to kind of see what's going on there. That you can access it that way, or you can use our DNA Center to be able to use the features that you get with the license on it. That gives you the ability to do software-defined access, to see the assurance data, to be able to put it in inventory, to be able to put gold images. So I think one of these days we'll do a DNA Center kind of talking about some of the features for it, but you can manage the 9300 even without it, with either doing the GUI, SSH, Prime, whatever you're used to. It's just a lot of ways to be able to take control of that. So lastly, great Scott, let's travel to the 9300 data sheets. And like Jay said, for the products here, there's depending on what you're trying to solve, we have probably a solution to handle all those. Um, if you just want the regular data, if you need PoE, if you need PoE plus, all the combinations are in, and this is where you can start seeing like the B series, MGig. If you want fixed instead of modular, we have all the way across. But just wanted to show you all this information is available online anytime that you have questions to be able to look at it. What type of network modules you wanted to use if you want to go that route, power supplies, which ones you're going to use. Want to quickly show again the licensing on these, that by default, if you get the essentials, like we talked about, you get layer 2. These are things that will not go away if the subscription expires. These are set on the box. The ability to do, and see, there's even a little more features on the essential than the 9200. You can still do netconf. You can do guest shell. You get a little bit of visibility. You can still do netflow. That does not expire. Only these features are the ones that if you do not like the subscription that comes with it, it's not a difference if you did not enjoy any of these features. But just wanted to show you, even on here, if you have questions, you can look to see that, if you like ETA, make sure you put Advantage or Premier on it. And then what's the differences between those? Usually the ICE licenses that come with those. But just an overview, and if you have any questions, you can go there and Elle should be able to answer it. And like I said, always reach out to us. We're more than willing to have a call with you and kind of talk about what the differences are if you have any questions.
And a couple other features I like to talk about on the 9300s. If you're looking at SDA, we can do branch in a box, where you can run your control plane node and edge node and everything right on that one box, which is great for small branches. The other feature, we can run an embedded wireless controller right there on the 9300s. Since the OS is container-based, there's a lot of flexibility to do all sorts of really cool stuff there.
Yeah. And then just a few, and since this is a learning webinar, we just want to make sure everybody is aware of some of the things that are coming down. Unfortunately, Cisco Live is not going to be an actual live experience, but we're switching it to a digital. And we understand that since it's not going to be the same experience, we actually reduce the cost to where it's free for everybody. So if you can now, just go to Cisco Live, the web address. Go ahead and register now. They'll I think in May is when we're going to get the actual catalog, or like the way that the classes are going to be set up. But just be aware, this is definitely something to pay attention to if you're interested in that, especially with no cost for it.
That's a 100% discount.
Yeah, that's right.
Coupon code Lance and Jay.
Yeah, that's right. Make sure we get credit for it. And then some of the other stuff we have going on is and these are ones you'll have to reach out to us to. We didn't want to bombard everybody with these, events, but we usually have classes that we can, if you're interested in, at least steer you towards. There's a Cisco workload optimizer. So if you're looking into doing a lot of compute with the ability to have it kind of self-harmonize itself, CWOM is a good one to be able to can tell if your environment's getting taxed to add more CPU or more RAM, the ability to really ensure your environment stays up. So if you're interested in learning more about CWOM, let us know. That's on Tuesday. And then of course, hopefully, most of you are also going to go to the CCNA. That's right after ours. So we're kind of like the pre-show. That's all right. We're getting everybody warmed up. And this is going to happen every Friday, all the way down to June 26th. It's an hour and a half. But this is a CCNA training prep. So you won't be ready really to take the test. You'll have to do a few extras, like on the side learning to get ready for it. But at least covers the topics that you should be aware of. And so that's pretty exciting. I know a lot of people are really ready to go. So if you haven't got a invite for this, please let us know. We'll send it over to you so you can get registered and hop on. So you've got time now, or if you missed the first one, catch the second all the way through. And I also think backpacks. So they have a way of backpack if you go through all of those, or is that a different one?
And here, I think that was their security webinar.
Okay.
But yeah, the CCNA training is great. I mean, I'm due to re-up myself this year, so I'm actually sitting on the panel. We'll do Q&A for that later. So I get to relearn a bit and hopefully teach a bit. So that'll be a good time. But yeah, the CCNA training is totally free. It's being put on by Todd Lamley. I know a lot of folks know him. He's pretty much written the books on Cisco ASAs and Firepower. So he's an incredible resource, and that's going to be a really great training course.
All right. Well, just to summarize, like I said, we will send out the link to be able to watch this offline if you ever want to watch it or had questions during it. Make sure you email us if you do have any follow-up questions, or if you did type one in chat, we'll make sure we connect with you. And I believe the next session, which is probably really exciting, is the wireless side of the Cisco. So we'll talk all things wireless. We'll have the other SE up in our KC area in Missouri, Russell, who will do the presentation for us. So hopefully you guys all have an awesome weekend, and we will see you next multicast where we talk about wireless. So thank you for your time, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys. See ya.